Now at this point you might want to grab a pen and a piece of paper so you can take some notes as we're going along. I'm going to try to give you as much information as possible in the time that we have here. And as I said before, survivalism covers a lot of different areas and a lot of different topics, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to start in the most logical place, and that's the beginning. We'll cover the basic steps that you need to take to prepare for a disaster before it happens, make sure you don't get stuck and you're able to ride out the event. Now, that being said, the first thing that you should think about is storing clean drinking water. Water is your most valuable resource. You can go 3 or 4 weeks without food, but dehydration will kill you in as little as 3 days, so you want to make sure that you have enough. And in our culture, in the developed world, we take our drinking water for granted, because we can just stroll over to the sink and open the faucet and pour a glass of water anytime we want. But in a disaster situation, that access may be interrupted, or it may be destroyed altogether. So you want to make sure that you have a good supply and you don't get stuck without water. And even if you still have water running out of your faucet, in a disaster situation, you can't assume that that water is still safe to drink anymore. Reservoirs can get contaminated, the processing plant can shut down, so you can no longer assume that that water is safe. You'll have to treat it, or you'll have to resort to your stored water. Now, how much water should you store up? The simple answer to that question is as much as you can, as much as you have room for. Obviously, your situation may be different. If you live in an apartment, you may not have as much room, and you're also have to consider that you need space for storing food and other supplies too. So you're going to have to make that judgment call for yourself. The general rule of thumb for water storage is to store at least a 3-day supply, but I like to have more than that because you can never tell how long your situation is going to last. How much water do you need? You should store at least a gallon per person per day. Your body needs at least a half a gallon of water per day to stay fully hydrated, but you also have to take into account that it might be hot, climactic conditions, you might be sweating a lot, and you need to replace more water. And you'll also need water for cooking and for cleaning. However, drinking water is your biggest priority. Don't waste your water on washing if you don't need to, if it's scarce. And stay as hydrated as possible. Rationing your water won't help you much. It won't buy you any more time. And dehydration can affect your thinking, it can cloud your judgment, it affects your energy levels and your strength, and you want to keep all of that up in a disaster situation, so you're not doing yourself any favors by trying to ration your water out. Stay hydrated and drink as much as possible. When you're storing your water, only use food-grade containers. Obviously, you don't want to use containers that used to have detergent in it or gasoline or anything like that. You want to use peat containers. That means they're food-grade. That'll be stamped on the bottom of the container, and that means that it won't leach out any chemicals or won't gas out into your water. These are the typical types of bottles that you can use. You can get containers at your nearest camping supply store, like the one in the upper left-hand corner. 2-liter soda bottles are great if you need to recycle bottles for storage. They're sturdy, they're easily stored, they're very portable. I really recommend the 2-liter bottles. Try to stay away from using milk jugs that used to have milk or juice in them, because they leave behind a residue of protein or sugars if it's juice, and bacteria can breed in that. You can use them in a pinch if you sterilize them, but try to go with something that didn't have any milk or juice in, like soda bottles and just regular water containers, and make sure you sterilize them before you put your water in them. Now, to sanitize your containers before use, just put about a quart of water into the container and add a teaspoon of common household bleach. Just make sure you use straight plain bleach. Don't use any bleach that has detergents like color safe bleach, and don't use scented bleach either. Then just swish the mixture around inside the container, make sure the interior surface gets completely covered, and rinse it out and it'll be ready to use. Most communities add chlorine to the water to sanitize it. If that's a case where you live, then you don't have to do anything further to the water. You can just pour it right from your tap right into the container, cap it up, and then put it aside for storage, and it'll be fine. However, if you get your water from a well or from some other source, then you're going to want to add about 4 drops of bleach to the water, and that just prevents anything from growing in the water while it's in storage. Mark the date on all your containers so you know when you need to rotate it, and keep it in a cool, dark place, and it should be fine. Now, about every 6 months, you're going to want to go through your inventory and pull out any water that was bottled more than 6 months ago and dump it out, and then just refill it and add bleach if you need to. The chlorine is good for maintaining the purity of the water for a little more than 6 months, but 6 months is a good rule of thumb. It's easy to remember. Now, if you're in a situation where there's been a disaster and you did not store any water, yet you still have water coming out of your tap, you still have running water, you will need to purify it. As I mentioned earlier, you can't tell if the water's been contaminated by looking at it. You can't see cryptosporidium or giardia or any of the other invisible nasties that might be swimming around in it. So you're going to always want to purify it just to be on the safe side. Filtering water is not purification. You should never rely on a filter alone to make your water safe. If you have a device like Brita water filter, or the kind of filter that screws onto your faucet, or might have it under your sink, none of those are 100% effective at screening out all microorganisms. I don't care what anybody says. These filtration systems are good for getting sediment or some of the chemicals out of your water, or maybe some of the minerals, but they're not meant to purify water. In my opinion, they're good for improving the taste of water that's already safe to drink, but they're not good for making unsafe water safe. So you must always purify the water. And the best way to do that is just by boiling it. Just bring the water to a rolling boil, and you're done. Some people might tell you that you have to boil it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That's really unnecessary. Anything that's living in your water will be dead by the time the water reaches the boiling point. Otherwise, you're just wasting fuel and you're evaporating water unnecessarily, which you don't want to do, especially if water is scarce. So you just bring it to a boil, let it cool down, and then you can bottle it, or you can drink it right then if you need to. If you can't boil water, say if your gas got knocked out or your electricity is out, then you can use, again, common household bleach. Just use 8 drops of water for if the water's clear, and 16 drops if the water's cloudy or murky. And again, don't use scented bleach or color-safe bleach. Just use plain old regular 5 to 6% chlorine bleach. And then you let it stand for about 30 minutes, let the chlorine do its work, and before you drink it, give it a sniff, and you should be able to smell a faint bleach odor. If you don't smell any bleach in the water, then you need to repeat the process. Put another 8 drops in, or 16 drops, let it sit for another 30 minutes, and then it should be fine. Now, if you don't like the taste of the water, boiling the water kind of gives it a flat taste. It tastes kind of unnatural, in my opinion. That's because the boiling process destroys all the free oxygen that's in the water. Or if the water tastes too bleachy, if you just don't like the chlorine taste, what you can do to fix it is just aerate it. Just introduce free oxygen back into the water by shaking it up in the container, or you could pour it into another container and back again a couple of times, and that should do the trick. Emergency water sources. If you're in a disaster situation and you didn't store any water and you no longer have running water, there are a few places in your home where you can get water that's safe to drink. One of which is the toilet. Not the bowl, but the tank. Don't ever drink the water from the bowl. Your dog can do that and not get sick, but I don't recommend that you do it. Even treating the water, I wouldn't recommend it. The toilet water will be safe. The tank water will be safe as long as you don't put any of that that blue hockey puck deal or the chemical that you put in the tank. I don't use those things. I don't know what they're called. But as long as the water's clear and there's no chemicals in there, then you can scoop out the water, boil it, or add bleach to it, and it'll be safe to drink. You can get water from your water heater. And the way you do that is you close the intake valve, unplug it, or turn off a gas to it, depending on what kind of water heater it is, and then you can open up the release valve and catch the water from there. You may need to filter it. There might be sediment floating in the water, and you can do that by pouring it through a thick piece of cloth. Using a pair of jeans is a good way to filter it. Just cinch up the bottom of the leg and pour the water into the leg of the jeans and catch it in a bucket or something. Now, you don't want to use the water if the heater has been damaged, because those things are insulated with glass, and you don't want tiny little shards of glass in your intestines. That's never a good thing. Canned foods. You can drink the water straight from canned vegetables or canned fruits. You don't have to treat it. You don't have to do anything to it. It'll be fine. And you can drain the water from your plumbing. Even if you don't have running water, there will always be water left in your pipes. And the way you get that out is you close the intake valve, you go upstairs to a higher level and open up the faucet, and that'll introduce air into the pipes and create pressure. Then you go back downstairs to a lower level, to a faucet down there, and you open up the faucet and the water will come out. Unsafe water sources. These are places where you should never drink the water from. Don't drink the water from your car's radiator. There are some guides out there that'll tell you that it's safe to drink that water. The thing is, those guides were written before people commonly put antifreeze in their radiator. I don't think there's anybody out there who doesn't have antifreeze in their radiator, so that's not a good source of water. Your hot water boiler. Some homes, like in New England where I live now, a lot of homes use hot water boilers to heat their homes, and the steam radiator type of heating system, and that water is just nasty. You don't ever want to drink that. There's nothing you can do to it to make it drinkable. Don't drink the water from your waterbed. There's a chemical in that water that prevents the fungus from growing, or at least there should be. And you can't do anything to that either. So don't drink that water. And don't drink the water from your pool or your spa. The chlorine levels in that water are way too high, and that'll just make you sick. So that'll about do it for the water. And now we can move on to building your food bank or stockpile.